Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We need to like and describe us so we can get the message out a little bit more. But this next week, if you're anywhere around Texas, we'll be at the International Christian Media Convention. They're going to interview us 6 different interviews to get the book out. We're working as hard as we can to get the message out that Jesus is coming. Our new book, the countdown for the coming of the Lord. How blessed are we to look at stuff that happens every single week that's blatant about how close we are to the coming of the Lord. So that's what the End of Days Update's all about, is getting the message out with the books and for people to accelerate. You know, teaching on the end times is not about an escape theology, it's about a hustle theology. I talk about college football, I freak out. If you look at the quarterback not paying attention to the play clock, I'm just screaming at the TV. The church should be looking at the countdown right now. We're watching the seconds tick away for things that even happened this last week that we'll get into. I was just shaking my head going, this is getting so much clearer and so much bolder than I've ever thought I would see right before the coming of the Lord. Even though it seems like there's a quietness in the body of Christ, there needs to be a wake-up call for us to do everything we're called to do in a short period of time. Like in a race, you don't slow down when you see the finish line, you accelerate. So let's look at what's happened this last week, because the Lord wants us to know this stuff. Remember, we talked about the madman of Gadara. The demons yelled out, Jesus, have you come to torment us before the time? And they knew Jesus was on a schedule, but he was early. So if demons can know the schedule, how much more the church? And if under the old covenant, the tribe of Issachar had an understanding of the times to know what the children of Israel ought to do, how much more the church now? It's weird, the verses that Jesus used to tell them exactly when he was coming back, people have perverted it to make it sound like we could know when he's coming back. When Paul said in Corinthians, that day won't overtake you. So it's amazing how the Bible and truth sets you free. Once we do that, we look and see what Jesus did for us 2,000 years ago, and the program is different for us than those under the old covenant. We're under the new covenant. He's redeemed us. He's made us perfect. He's presented us holy, unblameable, unreprovable in his sight. And the rules are different when it comes to end times after the resurrection. I like in Luke 24:36, he said, pray that you might be accounted worthy to escape all these things and stand before the Son of Man. Well, he was talking to Jewish boys there. I don't have to pray to be accounted worthy. I am worthy because I'm redeemed from the curse of the law. Jesus made me worthy. So we'll get into all this stuff that's happened this last week. Some remarkable things have happened. Nations pushed into position, pushed into meetings this last week that are flawlessly the nations for the Ezekiel 38 war. So pretty amazing. So you got things starting out. You had the Yemeni government intercept Iranian weapons sent to the Houthis. Pretty cool that this was highly specialized equipment coming with drone technology, Guardian technologies, how they could protect their drones better than any time before. So it's cool that the Yemeni government got that from coming down from Iran. Now that's been happening a lot, sneaking things in from Iran down into the Houthis so that the weapons they need. When I was in Eilat, we had a missile hit right by us from Yemen. So it's like strange that all that's happening. But the next thing that's happening is another one of the ones that are surrounding Israel. You had Israel's U.S. ambassador on the Egyptian military buildup. Egypt is sending thousands of troops to the Sinai along with tons of tanks. I mean, they're arming this one section. What happened when Russia started doing that in the Crimea and the Ukraine? They invaded. So here you have another front that Israel's having to protect themselves on. In the Six-Day War, Egypt was one of the main players. So you see them coming into position for the Ezekiel 38 war because they're mentioned in that as well. So with that, you had the U.S. call for a meeting with Saudi Arabia over the Russian and the Ukrainian war. This was a huge deal because Zelensky was left out of that meeting. But what happened in that meeting? You had the Saudi crown prince coming on the scene. What you have right in front of your eyes is all these different nations with their leaders kind of wanting to be you could call it the peacemakers. So the peacemakers from Saudi Arabia, they go to this big meeting. So what does Macron do in Europe? He calls for all of the NATO leaders to meet in Paris. And what was the result from that? All those NATO countries said, we've got to build up our armament to billions of dollars pumped into our defense fund. So the response from that is they think Russia's getting ready to literally invade the NATO countries. So pretty crazy. Now, what freaked me out with that is that Zelensky was not invited to the first one, so Turkey invites him to discuss the Ukraine war. So Turkey gets involved. Turkey even offered to help Iran smuggle money to Hezbollah this last week and didn't even deny it. So all the main players right there coming on to meetings to literally look at what's getting ready to happen. So what's getting ready to happen is soon the church is going to be evacuated, and you'll have all these nations for the Ezekiel 38 war fall into place, and all of a sudden we see God intervene like he's never intervened before, because it will be back to Old Testament time. I think sometimes people don't understand that in this dispensation of grace. I mean, Germany killed 6 million Jews and prospered because God's not counting anything against anybody. But the moment the church is taken off the earth, it goes back to Old Testament time, and you watch all these nations that had these meetings this week get set up to go into action. So when you see that happening, you know you're getting close to the rapture of the church. So that's absolutely amazing. So you have the foreign minister, and I said this a while ago, but you had the foreign minister there in Iran in Israel talk about Turkey cooperating with Iran to smuggle money to Hezbollah. I mean, when you have that happening and them not even try to deny it, it's just kind of bizarre how these countries are doing this stuff. Used to, when a country is going to invade another country, they at least try to keep it from being in the opening, but now they just come right out and say it. So I like it that our country said all the options are on the table for stopping Iran's nuclear program. That verbiage came out of the new administration because Iran said, you can't do anything to stop us. So I like that America responded by, all the options are on the table. So finally, the heavy bombs that were withheld by Biden that were stopped, they finally arrived in Israel. And Israel needs those bunker buster bombs to go down in for the nuclear sites in Iran. So it's weird seeing Hamas getting bolder now. They're acting as if Israel's being a little bit too nice to them. In other words, they can have carte blanche in the Middle East. I love that everyone freaked out that Trump said we're going to have America basically rule Gaza. And everybody still freaked out about that. But it would be just like UN peacekeepers. It wouldn't be what everybody thinks. Now, I haven't heard anything in the last 2 weeks about all these Turkish bases that are trying to be built on the southern part of Syria. But you have all these outposts still being set up by all these other nations right on Israel's border. So Israel's been having to do a lot to kind of get the people that were pushed out of their homes up there in the north. There was hundreds of thousands of Israelis pushed out of their area from the north. So along with that, you've got archaeologists. They unearthed some ancient sanctuaries in Jerusalem with all these mysterious carved symbols. This is pretty cool because this is now where the city of David is. And in my opinion, I think they're going to find out that they'll be able to build the third temple there. Now, what's going on with this is you have the red heifers that supposedly are going to get sacrificed at Passover this year. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that because they're going, well, there's nowhere for them to do that. Remember a couple years ago, they did that on the outside of the temple. They got arrested. Last year, they didn't get arrested because the guy said, we got to let them do this. But in the last couple of weeks, I said it a few weeks ago on the EDU, you've got even on the Temple Mount, Jews and Christians were able to pray without getting arrested. When I was up there at Ramadan, I was on the Temple Mount. The Jordanian police were following us just to see if we were praying, and our rabbi was singing prayers. And I said, don't sing so loud so we don't get put in jail or kicked off the mountain. So there's a lot of things happening with that are going to come to the forefront here pretty soon. It's kind of wild to see Pope Francis' condition in the hospital worsens. It looked like he has pneumonia in both lungs. That's a big deal because he's the 114th that was prophesied by Bishop Malachi in the year 1129 AD. The History Channel said that's statistically impossible. Only a God can do that. So Denmark arms its defense budget with billions of dollars after having that meeting this last week with Macron. I still think it's crazy. I didn't talk enough about it that Macron is leading this thing up in the Europe. Because, you know, his name means, Emmanuel means God with us. Macron means the mark. He said, my reign will be a Jupiterian reign. If he's not the Antichrist, he missed a wonderful opportunity. Now, people write in so mad that I say that, but I'm joking. He looks even like the Antichrist guy in the Left Behind series. So he's doing everything he can to fill that void there. So you have South Africa being open to nuclear cooperation with Russia and Iran. That scares us that Iran could have some help from another country with its nuclear program. And then you've got all the stuff coming out in the public about this. You've got the Israeli Defense Department killed a senior Hamas official in Lebanon. It looks like this was really cool. The Ukraine appears to have destroyed its first Russian 350 air defense system. That's a big deal because it freaked Russia out that Israel could come right into Syria, and those systems were taken out by Israel. Now the Ukraine's finally taken out those systems. So Russia doesn't know what to do. So we're watching strange weather. You had 500 earthquakes off of Italy, off the 200 from last week. I mean, that's crazy. You have a ton of stuff about asteroids, about wormwood in 2029, and on the NBC Nightly News had a massive deal about the asteroid in 2032. So you have all these things naturally with the nations coming into place. You have the heavens preaching to us about this. Why? The King is just about to come back to the planet. Listen, the Creator coming back to His creation. Why do we get into all this? He loves you. He wants to bless you. He wants you to have all the information showing how close you are to seeing Him face to face. So let's run through the signs. Well, I know we do it every week, but boy, it's cool. There's so many cool signs. These are blatant, they're exact, and they're precise. We always go back to the Word. So you've got Israel regathered as a nation. You've got Jerusalem won back. You got the Hebrew language restored. You got the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You got the fertility of the land of Israel. You have the revival of the Roman Empire. You have foxes on the Temple Mount, fish in the Dead Sea turning blood red where Sodom and Gomorrah was. You have 170 different species of predatory birds showing up in the land to be the cleanup crew for these two different wars. Remarkable. You have the ritual baths around the Temple Mount fill up with water. You have all these things happening because even nature's getting into position. You have the Temple Mount Institute that's ready to have sacrifices, what we talked about the heifers earlier. So that group is ready. You have all these signs. Men will be lovers themselves. We have selfie sticks. I talk about in Los Angeles, a guy had 2 cameras up with 2 selfie sticks trying to take pictures of himself. So all these signs, sign after sign after sign after sign, pointing to the coming of the Lord. And then you go from that, you go to signals. The signals are the heavenly ones. What did you have this last few years? You had the blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. That's a pretty huge deal to have, NASA calls it a tetrad, 4 in a row, blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. Now, when's the last time that happened? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel was made a nation. 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. So heavenly activity pointing to signals that something's happening with Israel. Massive deal. And then you had the Bethlehem star. You don't hear a lot talked about that, but it's remarkable. At the birth of Jesus, you had Jupiter, a king planet, Regulus, a king planet, and then you had Venus, men are from Mars, women from Venus. You had all 3 of those come together at the birth of Jesus. Pretty remarkable. Constellation was Virgo, born a virgin. This last year when it happened again, we have a heavenly event here. All this stuff is here to show us something. And what was the constellation then? It was Leo. He's the lion of the tribe of Judah. So you got signs in the heavens, signs in the earth, signs all that the Bible said you'd see. So the truth sets us free that we're close to seeing Jesus face to face. So how do we respond? Help your local church. Help your local pastor. You don't fit church into your life. It is your life. Why? You're about to see Jesus face to face. I mean, it doesn't get any more radical than all of a sudden we're going to see the Creator. Think about it. He gave His life for us. Think about it. Beaten. And it pleased the Father to bruise Him so that we would be saved and healed. So least we can do is act excited about these great changes that are coming. What are the changes that are coming? All of the nations over the earth will bow down. They'll hit their knees and say, He is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That moment's coming when creation's going to bow to Him. Wow. We get to see Jesus magnified. We get to see Jesus glorified. We'll see Him high and lifted up with His train filling the temple. Amazing. The Son of God, the righteous one, the lily of the valley, the firstborn from the dead, the brightness of the glory of God. We'll see Him face to face. Come back next week. We'll look at all these nations that are making more moves to get in position for the coming of the Lord. Have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.